All right, so my internet connectivity is horrible right now, but I still want to talk about games, so I'm going to do this live segment, not live. We'll see if it works. I wanted to talk about a brand new game that previously was unknown, but I was hoping maybe this could be one of a handful of games, maybe say 9, that awakens something in me. That was a really, really vague way of describing this game. Unknown 9 Awakening, which the most notable thing I can think of with it is that the protagonist is played by the same actress who played Yennefer in the Witcher series on Netflix, which I thought she was pretty good as Yennefer in that show. Probably not who I would have cast if I were casting the show from scratch, but I thought she did a fine job before the show went to absolute crap. And, you know, we've seen some trailers for this, and it's always been kind of weird because it's one of those games that's like, what is it? It seems to have elements that are reminiscent of Banisher's Ghost of New Eden. It also seems to just be like standard third-person adventure game with some stealth mechanics, but like there's nothing really unique about it. It just looks to be an amalgamation of like 15 different little bitty games you recognize from other places. Little bits of Uncharted here, little bits of Banishers over there. And I know that it was in production well before Banishers released, but the point is, like, it doesn't feel that original. So to begin with, I wasn't particularly interested. Beyond that, there's been basically zero marketing for it. And I think the reason for that is because they knew that this was going to flop, which flop it has. It peaked 3 days ago at an all-time player high on Steam of 285, and the reviews have not been great. Now, I don't tend to rely a lot on Steam reviews for games like this, which I'll explain why in a second, because they are prone to getting swarmed by people who like are not playing the game and trying to evaluate its quality. You know, they're here to like brag about its failure or this or that for other reasons. Whether that's justified or not is a separate question. My point is just, if you're looking for the Steam reviews to be like, what is a fair judge of this game's quality? You're probably not going to get it through those Steam reviews. That being said, if you do happen to look at gameplay yourself, you're going to see just a really boring, lackluster offering. This is from Game Riot just a few days ago. And I mean, there's bugs, there's weird artifacting with different things, there's some elements that seem really like modern in their presentation, but then there's other things like the animation quality that's just not there. That's more in line with like early PS4 games. Again, this is so Uncharted. It's really funny. It's really funny to see, but standard stealth stuff, this weird like checkerboard artifacting that is a staple of upscaling stuff. But in this case, I can't tell if it's upscaling artifacting or if it is an artistic choice. Either way, it doesn't look great. And this is one of those things where like, if I can't tell if it is a bug or a feature, something's gone wrong. Because if I can't tell, then something's wrong. But even if we zoom in here, I mean, you can see it's just an FSR nightmare. I mean, this game is relying on upscaling to hit any decent frame rate so bad. This is why I'm expecting that this is probably FSR artifacting and stuff, because this level of graininess and this sort of like pinhole artifacting is something you see with that upscaling stuff that they do to hit decent frame rates. And even then, it's not looking particularly great. So we see other stuff. I mean, we can continue pushing on, but it just doesn't look fun. Like, it just doesn't look fun. And at that point, like, why are we playing the game? And this is my problem with so many of these games that have come out recently, is it just feels like nobody ever stopped to ask, who wants to play this? Because this is a business. You know, I think some people can get caught up in the discussion of like, video games are art. So it's not really about whether it's a good game, it's whether it's an important game. And that's all that really matters for some of these studios. Even though it definitely should be a consideration if you want anybody to buy it. Whether you like it or not, if your game is not entertaining, people are not going to buy it. For example, I've done plays and musicals with some local theaters in Northern Colorado. Haven't since COVID. I've just been too busy with this. But I know a lot of people who are still actively doing it. And there's been an attempt by some of these local theaters to put on plays and musicals which are written by local artists and authors. And I'm just going to be real. They suck. Like the plays are just bad. Because the thing is, if you're a good playwright, you probably live in New York and you're probably writing successful plays. You probably don't live in like a college town in the middle of northern Colorado. It just wouldn't make sense. Why would you be here? So they are doing this because they're like, it's about art. It's about putting forward messages from local artists and writers and allowing them a chance to share their art with the community. And then we put on the show. And I get that. I get that desire, but then you shouldn't complain when nobody comes to the play because they've never heard of the author. They've never heard of the play because it's brand new. Like, it's just bad. There was a play that I was asked to perform in years ago that was unbelievably bad. Like, so bad. I cannot even begin to describe it to you. I'm going to try, okay? Because there's not a lot to talk about with this game, so I'm going to provide you an anecdote from my lived experience that kind of reaffirms this. It was a play that was supposed to be a like discussion of the problems with global warming, or climate change in general, I guess. And so the play was supposed to be set in like a bunker after some sort of apocalyptic event caused by climate change or, Humvees or something. And there were like pages of dialogue, like 8.5 by 11 pages of just dialogue that went on for 5, 6, 7 pages at a time of just monologue nonsense of we need to grow and stand up to the problems of this world. For the earth, much like the rain, grows wet with water, but water being the life source of all, going back millennia, is what should control all and it just boring stuff. It was unbelievably bad. And we went to a table read and I said, I'll listen to the table read. I'll see what you've got. And I went, and the dialogue was already killing me. It was just not an interesting show. It was just basically the protagonist woman that was standing on stage, and she would ramble for like 20 minutes at a time. And then there would be a cut where she has like a vision of the future after she has saved it with her scientific experiments in this bunker. And they were like, yeah, and this, and I'm not joking. You're going to think I'm joking. They said, and now is the time where the dancing protozoa come out. And then the earthworms will come out, and we have costumes for the earthworms, and this is what they look like. And it's like, again, no joke. You remember those like blue dancing dudes in that club in Starfield? It was that. It was so unbelievably bad. It was like, who on earth greenlit any of this? So I made up some excuse. I was like, oh, I have a business trip. I think I was working at Best Buy at the time. And I was like, they're sending me on a training. I got to back out of the show. But it was so bad. It was so bad. And not once did they ever ask who wants to see this. And I would tell all of these people to their face this. I mean, it's like a running joke in Northern Colorado, this show. It was so bad. It was unbelievable. But with this, like, they never stopped to ask who wants to see this, who wants to engage with it, who would give us money for this, because it didn't matter to them. What mattered is whether it was important. And this feels like one of those games where it feels like this was greenlit on the idea and concept that it's an important game, not that it's a fun concept or a fun game or novel or unique in any certain way. So everybody that's played it is bored out of their minds. You can see people who are playing the game for playthroughs are putting in the header of their part one of the playthrough, I don't like it, sad face. Like you can't make this up, okay? So setting that aside, if you're wondering why some of this is being received this way, there's been a lot of ties with this game that people have brought up. So the studio that made it is called Reflector Entertainment. And Reflector Entertainment, this is their first game, but they have a lot of people that work there or have worked there that have ties to other groups that are basically like radioactive to a video game in the modern climate. A guy named David Bedard, he is the co-founder of the one and only SBI. And prior to that, he worked as the brand content manager over at Reflector Entertainment. And there's people over at Reflector Entertainment that still work there today that have been working on this game for like 4 or 5 years, probably since he was there, and have been actively banning people who bring up any of this, have been trying to ban anybody from their Steam community boards for discussing SBI connections or anything. It's pretty hilarious. But for me, like, there's kind of two sides of this. This game sucks and is flopping because it's a really bad game. And this is why I am never that worried about like SBI personally and other, let me be clear. There's a lot of other companies. I think there's like 3 or 4 that I know of that are doing the same exact stuff under different names that are not super toxic to the brand, that go kind of under the radar. But the reason why I'm not too concerned about those people's involvement in these types of games is because they are bad at their jobs. Like, they're really, really bad at writing. They're bad at game design. They're bad at all of this stuff that they claim to be really good at. And so it kind of has a way of working itself out. You know, they work on a Suicide Squad game and the writing is so god awful, the game is roundly mocked and loses the parent company $200 million. Sounds to me like it's kind of self-correcting. It's course correcting or whatever. Like, if really bad writers work on the Saints Row reboot, it's going to be really bad, lose money, and those people won't get hired again. Because the one thing executives love more than the pat on the back from people for being like really progressive or whatever is money. They care about money first and foremost above all else. And that means that they're predictable. And that means that you can easily figure out when they're going to dump the latest trend in pursuit of the next one where more money is going to be found. And I think we're at that kind of fork in the road. We're at that crossroads where all of these games that have been built exclusively on the premise that they are important, not just good, like they're not good games, but they're important games. They're flopping and they're losing millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And at some point, it just doesn't make sense to greenlight them anymore or to spend money on them anymore or to promote them anymore. And certainly for like SBI, I guarantee you, I don't even have to guarantee you. I know for a fact, I've spoken to somebody that works pretty high up in a multi-billion-dollar company in the game space, and they are actively avoiding SBI specifically because of the toxicity around the brand. If you hire them, you have to be prepared for your game to be subject to an onslaught of public hate that a lot of companies don't want to deal with. Shocker. They don't want to deal with it. So they're just not going to hire these companies. They're going to, like, these people will go and make a new company. They'll go create a different one and do the same exact thing, just under a different mantle, or they'll be more private and they won't be so bombastic or bold. So they'll always be in the industry, but now it's clear how radioactive it is to try and appease those types. And it's become clear that appeasing them does not mean that your game is going to be successful, which is perhaps the bigger takeaway. It was kind of assumed for a long time that if you put out the game that was the most modern, you would attract modern audiences and therefore just swim in money and cash all day, every day. And that's just not true. It just isn't, demonstrably, time and time again. It's just not true. You have to make a good game. Now, you can have like social messaging, whatever in your game, and you know that, like, who cares as long as the game is good. Like, for me, I just want to play good games. My point with these guys is that they are bad at making games pretty demonstrably. And the games that they make are just not that interesting. They're just not. Like, we've seen the trailers. The trailers look like generic adventure game number 4, and that's about it. And it's because no other consideration ever came into the equation. They just never stopped to ask whether this was worth doing. They just said, oh, that slays, and assumed that that would make money. And it just doesn't. It just doesn't. Like, even looking at this, I don't understand how this would get greenlit with like a $50 million budget or $100 million budget. I don't understand why an executive would look at this and assume that this is the next big thing. Even if I saw this trailer from like a Naughty Dog or something, I wouldn't think that this looks particularly amazing. It just doesn't seem that interesting. So it's another flop to add to the list of the year. This one, this time, was published by Bandai Namco. Bandai Namco typically has much better like standards, I guess, for these types of games that they greenlight. I mean, thankfully for them, I guess they have Dragon Ball, which has popped off and been really successful. But you know, they lost the rights to Elden Ring. Elden Ring bought out the rights for that, and so they got to find what their next big thing is. And it doesn't look like it's going to be Unknown 9. Tell you what, don't think that's the next big thing. So we'll leave it there. He took my thing. Red flag.